Hello everyone. My name's Binu Rudki. I'm one of the directors in the Reading practice for the global immigration side of affairs. In terms of global immigration, it absolutely is a hot potato, and it is the other side of Brexit. And I will talk at very, very high level, whereas my slides probably do appear to be fairly technical, but it's a takeaway. Hopefully, if the full events do actually send along the slides, you'll have all of that information to hand. Just a question in terms of immigration. How many, if I can have a show of hands, how many of you are interested in sort of employing migrant workers, or alternatively looking at tech startups coming into the Oxfordshire area? Oh, I might as well leave now then. No. Well, I think it will be very, very useful for you and a takeaway for you in terms of the information that's coming through into the UK and what UK government is trying to achieve. So what I want to run through essentially is obviously with the points-based system that the Labour Party introduced pre-2008, it was due to roll out, and it actually went through to obviously the coalition government who have taken that on. It's based on points, and it's migrant workers who are going to come to the UK. It was supposed to be a very robust, transparent system to employ migrant workers and to bring in the brightest and the best. As we know, the net migration figures still haven't reduced, and it's been difficult for government to show where the migration is actually coming from. And whilst there are a lot of European Union workers, the only area that they can control is the non-EEA nationals coming to the UK. And organisations, most definitely at a global level, high net worth also, are relying on non-EEA nationals coming to the UK for purposes of inward investment. So what we'll look at is the impact of the restrictions that UK government has introduced with regards to non-EEA nationals, migrant workers coming to the UK, and also the salary hikes as well, which will probably affect this regional area. Well, I think it was Harriet, you probably said the opposite in terms of it's quite a largely paid area in terms of Oxfordshire in comparison to South East London and so forth. And that's something that the CBI have been working on, so the Confederation of Business Industry, fighting the regional corner in terms of salary and how high it is in terms of the changes for salary thresholds, that certain companies just won't be able to afford the threshold limits. And we'll take a look at that now. So the Migration Advisory Committee advises UK government. They're an independent body of economists, and they issued a consultation response that UK government had advised them or instructed them to run through. And the results were that there are a lot of intra-company transferees coming through at a global level. Now, in terms of the salary hikes that they've issued, is that any intra-company transfer migrants coming in, and particularly in the tech sector, will be £41,500 across the board. But not only does that affect the tech sector, it affects any intra-company transfer migrant. So if you want to bring somebody over that's providing a service to an organisation in the UK, that's the salary threshold they will have to meet. And the reason for that is that what government wants companies to do, or global organisations to do, is find somebody from the resident labour market. And currently that's also the EU as well. So in the autumn of this year, there'll be certain changes which are coming in. And it's in terms of salary thresholds. So these are the basic thresholds that you're looking at. So a Tier 2 general work permission, and I don't want to get too technical with it, is for a migrant worker who's going to come here and will be entitled to settlement in the UK. So you're looking at an increase of up to, it's 25,000, whereas it was 20,800, and that'll be issued in the autumn of this year. So as you can see, I don't want to run through this too much, but where they're focusing on is Tier 2 intra-company transfers, or also shortage occupations as well, such as graduates in the UK who are going into teaching, for example, or even nursing. They're certainly going to be exempt from any advertising or the resident labour markets, and it'll be quite easy for them to switch in the UK. So medical professionals, radiographers, and particularly the one that interested me is Mandarin speakers, which I thought was very, very interesting. And I think that's part and parcel to do with the fact that 2020 to 2030, they're probably going to be looking at Asia, so China being a leading industry in terms of economic growth. and also India by 2020, which is a leading economy at the moment. So going into policy changes and just looking at the impact, really, rather than anything else, is that employers are going to need to ensure that anyone that they're taking on as a migrant worker meets the criteria for the salary thresholds. So they're really making employers think about, can we afford to bring in migrant workers? But the benefit that they've also introduced is that tech startups or any startup companies, they want inward investments to be brought into the UK. So we're working very, very closely with the UKTI. We did a webinar in Moscow whereby there are a lot of tech startups. FinTech, you've probably heard of, perhaps, possibly, with startups, introducing them to the UK to bring in inward investment. And I think that's the way, that's certainly the regional model is going to work, because there is a lot of Russian investment and most definitely Chinese investments as well, in terms of startups wanting to set up in the UK, and particularly in the Thames Valley corridor. What that will do is it links into the skills levy as well, so the apprenticeships, which the government has introduced. And Ian, you stole my thunder with that, because that was something that I wanted to talk about, but I'll come on to that. In terms of the skills levy, what's going to happen with that is, from an immigration point of view, is any migrant workers who are coming to the UK, or businesses bringing in migrant workers, it's £1,000 per migrant worker per annum. So if you imagine you've got somebody coming in for 5 years, that's £5,000 that is going to go into this apprenticeship levy. So how that works, obviously, in terms of companies, that's probably more your bag. Charitable organisations and fresh start-up companies, the levy will be £364 per migrant worker. But you can imagine the cost. So what we're trying to actually do right now is educate employers to be prepared for the level of charges that government is going to charge. And by that, what I mean is, as an example, there's an immigration health charge, obviously to support the NHS, and that's £200 per migrant worker. And they're introducing that also to family members, so dependents as well, that also will have to pay that. So that's a phenomenal cost. If you've got a family who's paying for 5 years, £200 each for each family member, and then you've got the £1,000 levy for the immigration charge, skills charge, to be paid into the apprenticeship schemes to fund those in the UK, that's phenomenal. So I think employers really need to think about who they need to bring in to the UK. Are they really worth it? And also paying those costs as well, bankrolling, in terms of how you're going to afford that if you've got quite a number of migrant workers coming to the UK. So as an example here, we can see that, let's just say we've got a new hire coming into the UK that you would like to hire at £30,000 for an experienced worker. That's already £5,000 more in the autumn of this year. And then in terms of any graduates that you want to bring in, or high value businesses, tech startups, innovation, there's a lot of hype about data analytics nowadays. At the moment, whereby companies, what they want to do is be able to monitor their populations. So I think the EU referendum, whilst not obviously, I guess, talking about that, but in terms of population monitoring, what data analytics will allow in the future to be able to do is monitor where your populations are going, your labour force is going, and into which countries, and male or female. And also they're addressing the gender disparity as well, which Ian mentioned. What we've also got is, in terms of intra-company transfer, so if you've got a CEO of a company coming into the UK, they've reduced the salary if you want to bring somebody in at that level, a very senior level, from £155,000, 300 to £120,000, which is very generous of UK government, I guess. But at least it means that it's a lower salary threshold that you can bring somebody in at senior level. And in terms of anyone that's coming in at a salary of £73,900 as an intra-company transferee, they're removing the 1 year requirement for experience. And I think what we're experiencing in terms of the economy and also the Thames Valley region is that there are a lot of organisations in India, in China, and also Russia, who are looking to set up businesses due to certain restrictions around taxes. And what they're wanting to do, and something that I'm very passionate about, is the education of the Thames Valley Corridor, because they want to be close to connections and links that are easy to obviously navigate around and set up in industry as well. And certainly I think the population growth will happen in this area, the Thames Valley Corridor area. And I'm being told that I need to finish up. Okay. So I've talked around that. The expenses I talked around with government fees. As an example, if you've got somebody coming in for employment for a period of 3 years, government fees come to a total of 1,463. If you include the surcharge for that period, you're looking at £4,463. So there's really an incentive to employ somebody from the resident labour market. And recent updates that we've had are just around more technical information, which I won't go into, but if you do have any questions around that, I'd be certainly happy to help. I think that's probably it from me. Thank you.